Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Luke. It's amazing. So before we get started tonight, we have a lot to talk about and some great things to talk about how, after just 2 of these Freedom Squares, we've put points on the board. We've put points on the board here in Arizona. And I gotta be honest, this is an amazing turnout considering it's 175 degrees outside. You know, before we decided to kind of come to Arizona and make this the stand for the entire nation, I didn't quite understand the perseverance and the intestinal fortitude it took to survive these Phoenix summers, but it's a little bit easier than Chicago winters. But I just want to say, our partners here at Dream City, they've been amazing. They don't charge us anything to do this. They're incredible hosts. And I want you to consider, maybe the Lord has blessed you over the last year, or maybe you just got a promotion to support some of the initiatives they are doing to actually improve the welfare of the city around us. And we don't give to get, we give because we've got so much and we receive so much. And so please join me in welcoming, just to go through some of these initiatives, and we're gonna get right into the news, the good news, Angel Barnett from Dream City Church.
Welcome, Freedom Square. We are loving seeing you on a regular basis. You feel like family, isn't it great? So much, I know. We're getting stuff done, and I love that. This group is really making things happen for Arizona, but you know, a large population of Arizona are Native American people, but they're also the most underserved. And in 6 short weeks, we're gonna open up the very first of its kind in the nation, a residential life recovery program for men, Native American men. Wouldn't you agree that we've got to start with the men as well? They lead the home. They lead the spiritual welfare of their family, the way they treat their family. We're going to get to make an impact in that. It's going to be a transitional program in which we're working with them with workforce development and putting them into their first job, maybe having the first interaction with computer skills that would allow them to have their first job opportunity and just distract them from the addictions of life and give them hopes and dreams and a new trajectory. That's what this Dream Center is gonna do. People have been getting behind it and working, getting their fingers dirty, and they just so proud of what's going on up in the White Mountains. And wouldn't we all want to make a difference if we knew there was a way? But there is a way, because we're in position to do so. We're gonna love on these people and let them know God is not done with you. So thank you for letting me share. We want you to be able to know there is a way to be a part. And there's things we're doing tonight in a civic way, but there's a part that we can play in a person's life that will really last an eternity. So there's different ways to make a donation on the screen, but even your envelope in the seat pocket in front of you, DC Foundation, that stands for Dream City Foundation. This does not go to the church. This goes to the foundation and directly to the programs that are going to make a difference in these amazing people's life. Thank you guys for being a part.
Thank you, Angel. I can tell you these programs for recovery are so incredibly important. After the lockdown this last year, we got to step up and help our fellow neighbor after these unconstitutional and immoral lockdowns. And so I want to just reiterate what we're experiencing right here in Arizona is getting a lot of other churches, I don't want to say jealous, because that's not of the Lord, but it gets them a little bit into a place where they want what we got here. Let's just put it that way. So I'm happy to announce that the vision that we have kind of put forward is now growing with momentum. Next Friday, we will be launching Freedom Square in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Steve Smotherman's church. We have also Troy Maxwell at Freedom House in North Carolina will be opening up a Freedom Square in the coming month or 2. Jack Hibbs at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills will be doing a Freedom Square. Rob McCoy in Thousand Oaks, California, and many more, and we're just getting started. So you understand that your attendance here, your involvement here, you know, churches across the country, when they see crowds like this on a weeknight, when you have another weeknight program in the next night, that's sending a message. So you understand that this is gaining momentum all across the country. So last month, our second Freedom Square, we talked about the need to get involved in school boards. and we talked about the Chandler Unified School District. Where are my Chandler people out here? Somewhere? God bless you guys. So I kind of previewed this very carefully because I didn't want to over preview my plans, but I showed up at the Chandler Unified School District meeting last month. So let me tell you about this experience. I had never been at a school board meeting before, and I did this in part because I wanted to show the power of Freedom Square and the power of regular people showing up and holding our school board leaders accountable. So I didn't really know what I was doing. So you have to show up rather early and you sign in your name, and then a crowd kind of starts to form. And what was so amazing, the first thing I just want to say is how many of you came up to me and said, hey, we're here because of Freedom Square. We're here because of Freedom Square. Now, I don't know about you. Have you ever heard of a school board meeting where there are more people that want to get inside than they have chairs? Well, this was the case, right? So they only had 25 chairs for us, but there was like 200 people there. And I think Freedom Square is largely responsible for at least half of that, right? And so let's just refresh our memory as to why Chandler Unified. Did we just kind of close our eyes and point somewhere on the map? No, because they were putting forward critical race theory, mandatory equity and symposiums for all their teachers and all their instructors. And we went through in prior teachings of why that is so dangerous and pernicious and against who we are as Americans and who we are as Christians. So I show up, and it's kind of funny. The people that were announcing it, they kind of realized that there was some things that don't belong. And James T. Harris also showed up alongside me from KFYI, who's just phenomenal. And so they're announcing, Joe Smith and, Carl, and then they say, James T. Harris, and, and then they're like, Charlie Kirk. It's like, not exactly enthused about that, right? So we're let in, we're granted access. And so the first thing that I noticed when I showed up to this school board meeting, and I want you all to understand that you inspire me to also take action when I see these crowds. It goes both ways, right? That I hope that we can inspire you to action, but you also inspire those of us that are presenting to actually take more action. So I showed up to the meeting. First thing I realized, whoever thought this was a good idea should be held accountable and fired. Why is it that these school board members sit 10 feet above you when you enter, as if they're on the United States Supreme Court? It's intentionally, physically, and aesthetically intimidating, right? It's like, I'm going to look down, you sit. It should be the other way around. It's like, no, we're going to look down on you, we employ you, okay? And so it's intentionally that way. And so you could tell that there was, a lot of parents that had never spoke before. But I have to say, before I had an opportunity to speak, the courage and the wisdom of parents that have never spoken publicly before about these issues was so inspiring. I have not seen this kind of grassroots movement in anything except maybe 10 years ago in the Tea Party, but this is a different type of energy. And these were parents that were rising up and they were saying, you know what, I've never cared about this before, but I'm not going to allow you to take my taxpayer dollars to destroy the neighborhood around us. Now, and so I want to play you my remarks there. They only gave me a minute, and you're going to hear halfway through the video. They interrupt right to 30 seconds, like right on. You cannot go a second over. And so for those of you that are going to show up to school board meetings, maybe you're inspired, you have to embrace the over-legalism, right? The signing in, the credentials, where you sit, how long you speak. They're looking for technical reasons to not allow you to speak. We navigated all of that, and let's just watch my 1-minute remarks, and we had a lot of fun with this.
Charlie Kirk.
Good evening. I'm an Arizona taxpayer and employer of over 100 people in this state. I'm disgusted that you are lying to the citizens of this state and the people that pay your salaries. You say critical race theory is not in the school district, and then moments later, you have someone come up and use that word, equity. Just last week, the CUSD Summer Equity Symposium was held, and it was, quote, to create systemic change, change your leadership thinking. How about addressing implicit bias for student excellence? If you know anything, just a little bit, about where these ideas and these phrases come from, you know that this is stomping on the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. This is a racist, vile, and evil ideology that has infected this once great school district. I implore every single member of the school board to actually learn what you are supporting. Equity means redistribution. If you care about skin color, you are a racist. That is a bigoted and awful idea. It is against who we are as Americans. I implore this school district to reconsider. Thank you. That was a lot to fit into a short period of time. And that was not the best speech of the night, I could tell you. Now, I do have to say that doing radio every single day, and thank you for those of you that listen to us on AM 960 every day here, kind of gets you used to having to say a lot in a short period of time. So it was good training for that. But here's the amazing news. After these speeches, and I'm going to get this exactly right, after all of that controversy, there were 2 open seats on that school board, and 17 patriots and conservatives that had never run for anything before had stepped up to fill those seats. 17 people have stepped up to fill those seats. So we're going to keep our eyes on the Chandler Unified School District. And what was so great through the whole process is that it was evident that the school board members were not used to big crowds. They were not used to being held accountable. And they were a little bit nervous. And I don't wish that upon people, right? I don't want them to be uncomfortable. At the same time, I do want them to feel as if what they're doing is being watched by the people who fund these institutions. And so this is now happening. We're going to keep our eyes on all this. The second thing that happened since the last time we spoke, there's been a lot of announcements around this of what we've been involved in. I know this can be somewhat of a tricky topic, and I'm going to do my best to make it not very controversial or tricky, which is this idea around mandatory vaccinations, right? And so I'm not here to tell you the vaccine's a good idea. I'm not here to tell you the vaccine's a bad idea. I'm completely neutral on the topic. I've personally made the decision that I'm not getting the vaccine, and no one should be forced to get the vaccine against their will. It's that simple. And so we saw this, and we're seeing this across the country, this trend of mandatory vaccinations. Now, some people say, well, Charlie, they're not really mandating the vaccines. They could always drop out of school, for example. So basically, the way, okay, so yeah, you have to get the vaccine to go live your life. Like, okay, sure. And so what was happening almost out of nowhere is Arizona State University came out with guidance saying that if you don't get the vaccine, you must be subject to almost daily testing. You must wear a mask at all times, indoors and outdoors. And if enough people in the class demand it, you have to be forced to take an online class, right? So basically, you don't get any of the same sort of experience as your fellow classmates. And so we went really hard against this. And so many Freedom Square attendees joined us in this at an almost instantaneous reaction. And we said to Arizona State University, this is not going to happen. We called on the governor to step up and do the right thing. And I am pleased to say that within hours, Governor Ducey stepped up and said this has no place in the state of Arizona, and we are not going to mandate vaccinations for college kids that attend our state universities. And so this is because of you. I'm making this pattern here. This is the largest gathering of pro-freedom people in Arizona at a regular basis. Now, it's the largest gathering at a regular basis, but I'm going to take a short detour to tell you what will probably be the largest gathering of Arizonans, who knows. And so through our political vehicle, our 501c4 organization, Turning Point Action, we've been given the opportunity to host President Trump on July 24th. Do we have a graphic for that? I think we might. Yeah, there it is right there. And so if anyone's interested in coming, this is not an endorsement of Trump. If you're just interested to hear that, you guys can go to tpaction.com/rally. And if you guys just put in the promo code, you're a Freedom Square attendee, we're going to do our best. Let me say that again. We're going to do our best to try to get you in. We have a record amount of interest, unlike anything we've ever seen before. But that's going to be a very interesting event where we talk about, by the way, we're going to be promoting Freedom Square and highlighting some of the mothers and people running for school board, real-life Arizona issues. And so just want to, and by the way, the people in President Trump's orbit have been keeping eyes on what's been happening here at Freedom Square, and it really, I think, played a big role in him wanting to come out on July 24th. And so mark that on your calendar. We're really excited about that. Okay, and that's not it. So we won on the mandatory vaccination program, but also the last time we spoke, you might remember that I took I was very careful, but also very disappointed that the governor was not taking more decisive action on some very important pending legislative items. And I told you to contact the governor and contact your legislatures. Now, it wasn't a perfect reversal, but I could tell you that there are now more points on the board than I even expected. For example, HB 2906, authored by Representative Jake Hoffman, quote, fully bans the hateful, racist, and divisive critical race theory at all levels of government within our state, including schools, and this is the first in nation legislation to combat CRT in a sweeping fashion, making Arizona the national leader in combating the divisive curriculum, signed into law. HB 2898. This is a law which ensures that students cannot be taught that one race, ethnic group, or sex is in any way superior to another, or that anyone should be discriminated against the basis of these characteristics. The law allows a fine up to $5,000 for schools that violate this law. And these two work in concert, again, signed into law. So they're right there. So we identified a problem here in May, and don't underestimate the combined power of thousands of people gathering and collaborating. You contacted legislators if you saw fit in this session, and all of a sudden you've now seen Arizona take bold and dramatic action against these problems. Now, you know what's so incredible about this? What's incredible is that this embodies leadership. This embodies, and who's leading? You are. That's the true form of government, isn't it? Because the people in charge should be taking their cues from you. And when big crowds congregate and messages are sent around what we demand, that's how we start to get this stuff done. That's how we start to implement this form of policy. And I'm not done. HB 2905 is a piece of legislation for an election integrity that bans the mass mailing of ballots to voters who did not request an early ballot. The legislation also adds a Class 5 felony for county recorders who go rogue and willfully violate this law. Also, HB 2035 is curriculum transparency and parental notification piece of legislation that provides parents with an opportunity to participate in, review, and provide input on any proposed sexual education, curriculum, or course of study before it becomes adopted. Now, I want to reiterate this. This might seem obvious, but while Arizona is now taking a pro-freedom moral stance, the rest of the country is going the other direction. So the legislation prohibits sexual education from occurring kindergarten to 4th grade. You might say, well, Charlie, that's obvious. Obviously. Well, in Chicago, where just last week, they announced that 5th graders will be given free access to condoms. That's happening in Chicago. 5th graders. That's the difference between leadership and decay. Now, some people say, Charlie, how do we prevent Californians from coming to our state and wanting to destroy it? You know, honestly, one of the ways we prevent that from happening is when we implement policies that they hate, then they might not actually move here and live here and might want to. Actually, if they love critical race theory, I'm sorry, Arizona's not the state for you. If you want 5th graders to be taught sexual education, Arizona might not be the state for you. And the point is that when you lead and not follow, all of a sudden, as it says in Jeremiah 29:7, this is kind of the theme verse of Freedom Square, that contest or demand the welfare of the city or the nation at which you are in, because your city's welfare is your welfare, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. So I just want to say that in the course of 60 to 90 days since starting this, we've put points on the board, and if you're like me, I don't want to let up. I want to play offense. I want to keep on making Arizona a leader in these sort of pro-freedom, pro-American reforms. So now I want to get to two things that have really been on my heart to talk about, biblical things. And we're going to do some questions. I always feel like we're rushing with questions, and I really want to get into those. I know a lot of you have things you want to share, and things you want to get to, and things you want to explore together. So the first thing is I want to talk about this idea of being propagandized to do something that you know is wrong. Now, it doesn't just pertain to some of the COVID issues or the vaccine. I'm just talking in general. What do we Christians do? What are we supposed to do when you see something is wrong, but everyone around you is telling you something completely and totally different? Well, there's a very interesting psychological study that focuses on this. It's called the Asch Conformity Test. Some of you might be aware of this. The Asch Conformity Test was a lab experiment with 50 male students from Swarthmore College. So here's how it worked. They were told when they were signing up that they were participating in a vision test. It wasn't a vision test. The participants were actually being misled intentionally to find out what is the power of group and mob psychology. So there was one person that was actually being tested and 4 people that were in on it. So they brought everyone into the room, and the one person would always go last who was the test subject. So this person would be sitting over here. Then the other 4 people would be lined up. So at the front of the room, they would draw 3 lines. And they would ask one after the other, which line is longer than the other? And what happened is, despite the apparent and obvious difference that one line was longer than the other, if the 4 people it's been a long week today, consecutively, thank you, said that the line that was actually shorter was longer, 75% of the time, the last respondent would go against what they saw and instead of what they heard. So I'm going to read the study for yourself. So there were 18 trials in total, and 7 students who were on the experiment purposely gave the wrong answer 12 times. 12 out of 18. And the head of this study, Solomon Elliott Ash, said, quote, "The tendency to conform in our society is so strong that reasonably intelligent and well-meaning young people, I would say all people, are willing to call white black. This is a matter of concern. It raises questions about the ways our education system functions and the values that guide our conduct." I'm going to reiterate this. Throughout 12 trials, about 3/4 of participants conformed at least once, and 1 out of 4 participants never conformed. So you here today are the 1 in 4 of that trial that refused to conform. Now, just to give you an idea that this is not sampling error, when they did this individually without the other people around them, less than 1% of respondents gave the wrong answer. So 1% versus 75%. And I feel right now, and I see in America, this crisis of conforming. This crisis that you have to give the same answer as the 4 people next to you, even though you see that one line is longer than the other. Even though you say, that's not the right decision for you. I know it's not. Well, the 4 people next to you are saying that. I'm sure all of you feel this almost on a daily basis, and it has a psychological almost torment where you start to question yourself. Am I seeing things correctly? Am I processing information? And when participants were interviewed after the experiment, most of them said that they did not believe they were conforming their answers, but they went along with the group out of fear of being ridiculed. I want you to think about that. They didn't say to the people afterwards, "Why'd you give that answer?" They said, "It's because I was afraid of ridicule." Line A is shorter, line A is shorter, line A is shorter, line A is shorter. And you see, obviously, that line A is not shorter. But you're very likely to conform because you don't want the ridicule. And a few of them even stated in this study that they thought the group's answer was correct. They were convinced against their own lying eyes that the virus didn't come from a laboratory or whatever. The experiment concluded that people conform for 2 main reasons. They want to fit in, which is called normative influence, and because they believe the group is more informed than they are, which is informational influence. Now, so many Christians are going through this right now, and this psychological study confirms a truth of the Bible. It confirms something that Paul wrote about in Romans 12:2. "Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God and what is good and acceptable and perfect." You see, what we're living through right now is too many Christians are listening to the 4 answers before them instead of listening to what God wants them for their life and looking at what the wisdom of the Lord is. And this applies to almost everything that's happening right now. I have never seen in my life, and I'm sure you agree, such propaganda, such pressure to do something that you know is wrong. To do something that even you see that one line is shorter than the other, but we know how that psychology works. But I could tell you, one of the powers of this gathering here tonight is for you to know that 2,000 other people see that one line is shorter than the other. That 2,000 other people see the nonsense that is happening, whether on television or radio or podcasting or on social media. But again, the scriptures say, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world. So here's the test for you before the next time we meet next month, which will be on a Wednesday, right, Joe? We're moving it to Wednesday next month. Which is, the next time you're in a group setting, at work, with your family, with your friends, on social media, and those four people say something that you could see is wrong, are you going to be willing to answer it honestly and maybe face some ridicule? That's the question. Because the Bible tells us, do not, that's a forcible teaching, isn't it? Do not conform, instead stand firmly on truth against the pattern of this world. And we know who runs the world. The world is enemy-occupied territory. You could call it anything you want. You can call it the serpent, you can call it Satan, you can call it the devil. This world, Jesus called Satan the prince of this world. And so, are you going to conform to that pattern, or are you going to stand firmly for truth? The second thing I want to share with you, then we'll get to some questions, which I think is really important, which kind of ties together with this idea of conformity. But it's really what we're living through right now, which is actually where we get the word education from. So the word education comes from a Latin word which means to lead forth. Now, an interesting question is, well, what are you leading them forth from or out of? Well, actually, in the original Latin, it means to lead forth from out of the cave. Now, for those of you that know your Plato or your Socrates, it's okay, we're going to walk through all of it. This is actually where the first idea of education was passed on. And I'm going to show you right now in an illustration what our public education system is doing and what we have to do about it. What Socrates told Plato 2,500 years ago. Now, what does the Bible tell us about that most importantly? Because these metaphors and these teachings can be helpful, but if these studies contradict the teachings of the Bible, I cast them away. That's why I like the Asch conformity test, because it literally tells you what Romans 12:2 tells you. And so the allegory of the cave is something a lot of people would hear if they actually were being taught in college. It's not happening. But the allegory of the cave is something that's really important. This is something that was passed down for generation after generation of how we are living and existing. And this is exactly what I think is happening right now on CNN. It's happening on social media. And so many of your friends, and I'm going to show you a picture of this. So Socrates told Plato. Socrates taught Plato. Plato taught Aristotle. I think we'll be able to get the picture up. If not, I'll do my best to illustrate it the best I can. Do we have it up? Okay. This is called the allegory of the cave. This is the basis of the word education. So it's not just some bizarre thing out there. Imagine people who have been imprisoned since birth. So that's them on the bottom left-hand corner, okay? They share a cell that is completely dark except for one wall, which they look at all day long, which is illuminated by an unseen and unrecognized source of light. So there's a light at their back illuminating the wall of the cave. Prison guards and other prisoners, boxes and carts, pass between the light and the wall casting shadows. The inmates are incapable of interacting with each other except through speech, and all these prisoners see are the shadows on the wall, which they deem to be reality. These people come to name the shadows and have conversations about them and take them to be real objects, as the shadow world is the only world that they have ever known. One day, one of the prisoners escapes and sees that some of the prison guards have been passing shapes in front of the fire. So the prison guards are standing elevated, the fire is illuminating it, and they're making almost puppets that are casting a shadow on the wall. Somewhat easy to understand, it's a little bit complicated. But once she comes to see the shadows for what they are, which is only partial representations of real things, sound familiar? Only previously perceived in rough shapes and approximations. The freed prisoner escapes the prison itself and sees for the first time the sunlit world. At first, the sunlit world causes our escapee to squint, and her vision is blurry. She experiences pain, irritation, and even a longing for the comfort of her familiar cell. She's then tempted to return to her former life. However, after a time, her eyes adjust, and she comes to see things differently rather than as shadows. She comes to see real trees, cars, and so on, to know the difference between shadows and things that cast light on them. What's happening right now in our education system and in media and in social media and from our public health officials is we are not seeing the full truth of the truth at all. We are seeing a shadow being broadcast on the wall that we're told to look at all day long. That we are seeing a simulation of a shadow. And what happens is once people break free, I mean, how many people here have been what we call red-pilled? Anyone? Where you used to be on the left and now you're not? I love people. And so, by the way, I love The Matrix. I think it gets in, we were just having a whole conversation about this before, but how The Matrix is like one of the most underrated actual Christian films. I could get into that at a later time. It's more than you might think, right? Trinity, Morpheus, Neo, reword it, the one, anyway. That's a different conversation every time. Red pill, blue pill, right? You take the red pill, we'll see how long the rabbit hole actually goes. Blue pill, wake up in your bed. By the way, if you want to take the blue pill, like fine, just watch CNN, get your stimulus check, wear 2 masks, and you'll live a great life, right? Like whatever. But you won't be free, I can tell you that. So the Bible tells us that we should pursue truth, even if it makes our eyes squint, and we should always question what we are living through is actually rooted in reality. In Acts 28:27, it says, "For this people's heart has grown dull. With their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have the closest, lest that they should see with their eyes and hear with their ear and understand with their hearts turn, and I would heal them." And in Hosea 4:6, it says, the question is, why are people destroyed? That's a great question, isn't it? So Leo Tolstoy, which is one of my favorite authors, wrote War and Peace, not exactly an easy afternoon read, but he had a great question. He said, what is the power that moves nations? Why do some people succeed and other people do not succeed? The Bible tells us. The Bible tells us in Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. That's what the Bible says, that my people are destroyed due to a lack of knowledge. My people wither away in that cave, staring at a shadow all day long. Little do they know it's a simulation of what's actually happening. And what all of you are here tonight living through is you've decided to break those chains because you've been born new by Jesus Christ first and foremost, who is the breaker of the ultimate chains. And then you get in the world and you see everything differently. You see things like, oh, that commercial doesn't actually say that. Like, I see what they're trying to make me do. And then here's the interesting part. So Socrates predicted his own death. You may or may not know this, but Socrates was accused by his peers by a 51% vote of being a heretic or being someone that was corrupting the young, and he was basically assassinated to be a rough word, but he was murdered, similar to Jesus, by his peers, and he was actually forced to commit suicide by a certain drug simply for asking questions and pursuing truth. Now, what Socrates did, though, in this illustration, he said, you know what happens when most people are freed from their chains? They're angry because they realize they used to be in a place of comfort. How many of you have friends and family where you've shown them the truth about something in the last year in the news cycle? You're like, no, actually, there's a thing called VAERS, V-A-E-R-S. I don't want to hear it. I don't like it. I want to just focus on the shadow. You see, we as Christians, we must pursue light, not just the light of the fire, but get out of the cave and the ultimate purpose. And that's what we're living through right now. What I want to say, just to kind of close this all together, is that if we're going to be destroyed, it's what Hosea says. We'll be destroyed due to a lack of knowledge. And that's what we should be doing in our education system, to lead forth, remember? To lead forth out of the cave. That's not a good place. Human beings are not made in God's image to be chained to a wall and watching shadows all day long. That is not why God made us. He wants us to worship him, to obey his commands, to live obediently, and yes, live free thanks to Jesus Christ. In the same way that we should contest for our local government. So I want to just encourage you right now. I want to encourage you to tie this all together, and then we'll get to questions, is that we're putting points on the board. We are starting to make real movement. Now, don't be surprised, though, if the enemy tries to make a counterattack at this moment. And that's why we have to keep on gathering, keep on praying, keep on reading, keep on organizing, keep on doing real things. But all of us right here in the business that we're in at Turning Point USA every single day, as by the way, we just launched the largest ever anti-mandatory, let me say it again for the journalists that don't watch anything, anti-mandatory vaccine project for college and high school kids across the country. Because I know all of us have days sometimes where we wish we didn't know as much as we know. Right? That we didn't see all of it because it makes you it makes you squint because you have to be exposed to the sunlight. We wish we could just be chained to the cave and just watch Hulu and Netflix all day long. Because that feels good, right? Because it's kind of just forms, right? That's kind of what Hulu and Netflix literally is, right? Stare at the screen, stare at the screen, stare. That's what TikTok is, by the way. You want to see what the allegory of the cave is? It's literally TikTok, right? Nothing is real. It's all made up. It's to music. It's other people making it's all day long. Break free of that, everybody, and lean on each other, lean on the Word of God. And so to tie all that together, where we are headed in the next couple months, I could just see it, and we have a really good ability at our program and our podcast to kind of see things, as they're happening, not before they happen, that they're going to try everything they possibly can in the next 30, 60, 90 days to ridicule, to mock, to intimidate, to do everything they can against you to make you conform to their demands. So the question is, are you going to conform to the Word or to the world? And I know tonight and here at Freedom Square, we are here to say that we are going to obey God's commands, not that of the world. And I want all of you to know you're not alone, and we are going to win that fight together. All right, let's do some questions. God bless you guys. And as we get lined up here, I just always want to just say, if you guys want to listen to these conversations in full, or if you want to hear some of our conversations that we had with all sorts of subject matter experts, you could do that by checking out the Charlie Kirk Show podcast on your phone. And it's easy, it's free of charge. I know a lot of you already subscribed, so I'm telling you something you're already listening to, but it really blesses us, so thank you so much. Okay. That's an old book of mine.
So, Charlie, you red-pilled me years ago, so thank you
That is the greatest compliment I could. Thank you so much.
I was asleep for a long time.
I was Morpheus with the 2 pills?
Absolutely. So here we are, fast forward, we go about our daily lives, and what we're seeing happening in the world is wrong. What you're doing with the No Forced Vaccine campaign is amazing. I resigned from my pharmaceutical career in PR and digital marketing to join this fight. So I want to partner, thank you. I want to join this fight and partner and bring my insights and skills, because what we're seeing in the world is wrong, and if we don't stand up and make a change and choose to not be a part of it, then we're part of the problem.
I love it, and so thank you, and I want you all to understand how rare that is. Quitting a job and pursuing truth, that should be applauded, and you should be supported. The only way, so people say, Charlie, how is it that we're going to stop cancel culture? First of all, I don't like the term. I don't know about you. I don't like the term. It's too overly broad. The way we're going to stop cancel culture is when all of a sudden, when they cancel somebody, it's actually not a punishment, it's a blessing. That's when we're going to stop it. Where when they go after you because of a certain belief, that you don't fall, but you rise up. All of a sudden, and this will be a complete and total détente. The reason they do this is because they think it's a punishment, because they think they can actually hold that against you. What you're pledging yourself to, which is to get in this fight above a career, comes at a cost. It comes at a very real cost. But I want to commend you. I want to encourage you, because that cost is worth it. And I said this last weekend at Pastor Jurgen's church at Awaken in San Marcos. Amazing church, you guys. Awesome church and phenomenal people. This is a hard truth, but I think you all get this. And I have to say, honestly, if I would have said this 2 years ago, the room would have emptied out. Because no one wanted to hear this 2 years ago, especially when President Trump was president. Which is that for us to be able to get back the republic that we love, it's going to cost all of you something. And that's not something people like to hear. I think you are actually all more prepared for that message. And that might mean a job promotion. That might mean a career. It definitely will mean friendships. That's the first thing to go, right? It'll definitely mean social status and amongst other things. But the cost is not just worth it, but there's a blessing waiting for you on the other side. So the question is, would I rather be materially prosperous but spiritually shackled? That's a question. Would I like to be materially prosperous but spiritually shackled? I would much rather be materially struggling and spiritually free any single day of the week. And I know so many people would and I could tell you that when people make that decision like you, to act boldly and trust the Lord and obey His commands, then all of a sudden incredible things happen in more ways than one. So I just want to commend you, and I haven't seen that book for quite a while. So I just want to thank you. I want to try to get as many students to ask questions if we can, or young people, so you guys are able to kind of jump politely if you so choose. Yes?
Okay. Hello again, Charlie. It's good to see you. And before I ask my question, which is a perfect segue into this education that you were talking about earlier, I just want to go ahead and say, once again, thank you for all that you do. You're going to be doing these new Freedom Squares. I get your podcast, I get your newscasts, I watch you on YouTube. I don't know where you find the time to do everything. Thank you for all
Thank you for
do.
saying that. Thank you.
Now, the question that I have has to do with a podcast that you had last week. And it is biblical, where it says in Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he gets older, he will not depart from it. And so what's happening right now, as you know, our kids in grade school and high school are being taught all the CRT stuff, all the ungodly stuff.
Yes.
But on Friday, I heard your podcast, and you talked about cameras in classrooms.
Yes.
So would you please reiterate that for this group? Because it was
I'm happy.
wonderful.
Thank you. So I'm just going to put a disclaimer because I got a lot of emails after this. I'd say 95% of the emails were positive, but the 5% that were negative were like really nastily negative. So I just need to kind of put this out there. Conservative teachers are really worried about this proposal, and yes, there are conservative teachers out there willing to listen to those concerns, but let me just kind of tell you my belief. It's very logical and it's super simple. When I drop off my dog to doggy daycare, I can watch my dog on a webcam and whether or not that dog is being treated correctly and humanely. When you drop your kid off at school, you should be able to watch your kid in the classroom on a webcam to see if that child is being instructed morally and correctly and being led forth in the right way. It's very simple. And so I'm going to say something that the world will consider to be controversial, which I consider to be not controversial, so I just have to give these like disclaimers all the time, because I don't want people to like pass out, which is that I believe that public sector teachers are doing far more harm to our country than police officers ever have or ever will. And police officers are forced to wear body cameras in almost every single city in every state across the country. Now, the downside is some people say, well, these conservatives are teachers, they're going to be worried that they're going to be kind of monitored all day long. Again, who's in charge? Who's paying what bill? We're all paying a lot in Arizona income tax, and we're paying too much, by the way, because of a lot of different other reasons. And as long as they work for us, and as long as they're pushing this nonsense, then we should have audits, like we audit our election, we audit our companies, we audit the finances of nonprofits. At Turning Point USA, we go through an audit. I know you guys do every year at Dream City, right? And we've always gotten a clean bill of health, and I know Dream City has as well. And it's extensive, right? Where you bring an outside firm and they go through the whole thing. Yet we don't do that for curriculum. We don't do that for teachers, almost never in our public education system. So I think it's rather logical. And if the left, and I hate using that term, but if that side decides they want to all of a sudden have a surveillance state against every sort of group of people they don't like, for example, like Border Patrol agents or police officers, well then, okay, if you think that that's the case, then there should be no reason that we can't have a stable classroom in the camera that goes on when the classroom begins and goes off when the classroom ends, password protected only for parents, not to be abused by creeps and perverts in the local area, audited by a community review board to see what's being taught and when it's being taught. You want to see all of a sudden this indoctrination cut off at its knees? You want to see the rumors of the teacher bullying you be confronted with the truth of what actually happens? And here's why I don't actually have that much sympathy for that, is that I am constantly being filmed. It's not fun. I'm at an airport, someone always has a camera on me, waiting for me to slip up, do something embarrassing, right? All the time, right? And so this idea, like we live in kind of an era where you're kind of gonna be under attention if you're gonna be in a certain position. I'm not even talking about like talking when they come to school. I'm talking about in the classroom at a specific period of time, and if you pay those taxes, by the way, let's just make sure we understand the morals of this. The children are not the state's. They're not. Like, they're yours. We just have to keep on reminding ourselves that, right? The children are not the state's. They are yours, and you are tasked with the legal and moral authority to raise those children up in the ways, and your beautiful Proverbs passage is that. So what is the application of this? I think at every single Arizona school district, we should propose cameras in classrooms and do it very prudently, right, with wisdom, We don't obviously want to try to film things that at times when like kids are passing in hallways or whatever, we have to just do it where we can calm down any of the fear mongers. But again, with technology, this stuff's super easy. We're literally streaming to thousands of people right now, right? So I don't quite sympathize with this idea like, oh, we don't have the money. Like, okay, have you seen some of the schools in Scottsdale recently? Like, don't give me this thing like you don't have the money, right? And so I think this is an easy way to empower you to be able to stop the nonsense that's happening in these classrooms. I encourage all of us to bring this back to our local school districts and propose this as legitimate solutions to what we've been experiencing. So thank you.
Hello, Charlie. My name is Tanner. I was raised in a very patriotic family. I'm the kind of person that cries when the national anthem happens.
By the way, that is the most awesome flag I've ever seen in a church. I just gotta say.
My brother and I both joined the military. We're happy to serve.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Something that I wanted to ask was how to instill that patriotism in my generation, because I see it less and less, and especially with 4th of July that just happened, I want to see it again.
So can I just ask you a question? Amongst your friends and your peers, do you think that there's like a diminishing level of patriotism amongst them?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm hearing this a lot. So we kind of know why this happened, obviously, well, because we just went through a solution to how to fix it, but through our public schools and through our many different ways, there's been a deliberate campaign to get people to feel ashamed of their history and of their past. Now, what you're not thankful for, you're not going to preserve, right? So I'm just going to prove this in your regular life, obviously, right? So you're not thankful for that expired, like half-used bottle of shampoo. Does shampoo expire? I guess I don't know. Whatever. You're just going to throw it away, right? You're not going to preserve that, right? But you're going to preserve your father's dog tag when he served at Iwo Jima. Like, you're going to preserve that. That'll be the last thing that you give up. So what you don't appreciate, you're going to throw away. And what we've done is we've told young people that America is that expired half bottle of shampoo. You might as well just throw it away. It's a terrible place. And that has been done intergenerationally. It's been done by people in charge. It's been done by corporations, unfortunately. It's been done through political leaders and through government leaders. And so this is part of one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing at Turning Point USA. And so I'm happy to say that we're going to have a huge announcement next week in like 5 days where we're going to be announcing America Fest. It'll be happening in December in Phoenix. I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to say this publicly, but it's going to be like the largest pro-American celebration ever here in Phoenix. And we're going to be bringing in all sorts of amazing things because I share your concern. And there is a deliberate campaign to try to have people have ingratitude and, quite honestly, indifference to this beautiful gift we've been given. So some churches, by the way, are participating in this. And I believe it is unbiblical to not give thanks and to preserve and to protect things that were given to you that you did not make and that you did not create. In fact, we call those things gifts from the Lord. So you know what all of us have in common? We all were born into a world we did not create. So we were all born into a world we didn't create. Every person, that's human equality. You want to talk about human equality? It's the one thing we all have in common. We all have different ages. We all enter different worlds, right? But even the oldest person in this room entered a republic in America that is the greatest experiment in self-government ever in the history of the world. And it has allowed more opportunity, more prosperity, and it had, by every objective measurement possible, it is the greatest success story of government and a people ever. And we're at risk of losing it, but I'm optimistic. I know people say, Charlie, how could you possibly be optimistic? I'm optimistic because, look, we started this in May and we got points on the board, right? I'm optimistic because it is 145 degrees outside and we're filling this place up. And people are waiting in line to ask things and ask questions on how, and I'm seeing this happen all across the country. All of a sudden I'm seeing, again, I'm going to say something political, so we're a 501c3 organization. I'm going to say this personally, but I'm seeing this happen in California where like Gavin Newsom is on the ropes and Larry Elder declared for governor and like there's all these things that are happening. And Larry Elder's a good friend of mine. He's terrific. And so I'm seeing movement and momentum, and people say, Charlie, what are the numbers? Here's what I know what the numbers are. I know at least we got 1 out of 4 people in the Ash experiment that are going to stand up to the liars next to them. I'll take 25%. I'll take it. I'll take 25%. I'll go in the culture battle with all of you guys with 25%. Because I'll tell you, for every person that said no to the other people in that Ash experiment, there's at least double that wish they would have said no. And that you speak for those people. And that's what we call the silent majority. And I can tell you right now, in every local election, I can tell you right now, in every cultural issue, that they are on defense and we are on offense. Every single one. Now, that's not going to happen automatically. You have to stay in prayer, you have to stay obedient, you have to stay active, and you cannot stay passive and just be a spectator throughout this. But more fundamentally about America, we have to start younger. We got to start with our 5, 6, and 7-year-olds about why America's an awesome place, why it's worthy preserving and protecting. We have to be very clear about July 4th, and we got to be celebrating the history of it and why it came to be. And then finally, what I love about this flag right here, it's so beautiful, is that we should teach why that flag exists. What is the history of it? What does it stand for? This stands for biblical values. It stands for the equality of human beings. It stands for being made in the image of God. It stands for representative government, checks and balances on power. It stands for the rights of the minority. It stands for religious liberty. That's a beautiful thing worth preserving. And you and I, we're going to turn this generation around, I'll tell you. Okay, next question.
Yeah, I have a couple of announcements to make, but before I do...
Let's do questions, because I'm sure everyone's got an announcement, so let's do questions.
Let's see. Well, I guess I'd just like to say thank you for your inspiring leadership and bringing us all together here tonight. So
thank you for saying that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. But anyway, I wish there was some way that, I have handed out some flyers here and stuff about our event tomorrow night. And just be aware that there are other opportunities to get together here as patriots on a regular basis. So, I would just urge you to check that out and take advantage of it. And if you have any questions,
what's your name again?
My name is Steve.
If anyone is interested, they can go find Steve, and God bless you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Charlie. I sat next to you at the Chandler School Board meeting last
I remember. Were we wearing masks or not? I can't remember.
Oh,
yeah.
No, we don't wear masks.
No, good for you.
Thank you so much for being there. And all of the stuff that you are doing is bringing light to what we've been fighting. There's a bunch of us parents who've been fighting this for over 2.5 years. We were unheard. We would tell people about it. They thought we were crazy. That's not happening in our school district. President Trump comes out, critical race theory, and everyone's like, what's that? What's that? Now you all know. It was once Corwin's deep equity. That's what we were fighting. Walt Blackman helped us. Is he here, legislator Walt Blackman? I thought
He's a good man.
Right. He was there helping us 2.5 years ago. That term, critical race theory, morphs. And while I was very, very grateful for our legislators to pass that bill that we weren't going to have critical race theory, the very next day I'm told that social emotional learning is now mandatory. So critical race theory is embedded into social emotional learning. And I just want you to know that that is what our current superintendent, Kathy Hoffman, will probably run on. She's going to save the kids with social emotional learning that is embedded with critical race theory.
And this is in Chandler.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Yes. So they try to fool you with social emotional learning because you're like, oh, they need it. Kids need it. COVID, we were locked down. You have to be aware of this. I also wanted to say very quickly, I am on a school board. I did never attend the ASBA training until they started training on equity, and I had to go. So I asked my superintendent if I could go to the training, and I went down to Turning Point and shared the videos
Remember
with
that.
you guys, so they know that this is actually being taught. Like, it is the color of the skin. When they say it's not, they're lying to you. It is. I went through the training.
Super quick, because I really want to get to questions.
So I'm
okay?
on a school board. I have to get reelected, and it's going to be rough because I was an activist, and they say you have to decide if you're going to be a candidate or an activist, and I am both. And so I have a spotlight on me a little bit because I fought masks, I fought all of that stuff in the school district. I want you guys to know, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, anybody, you get on a school board, you get to make the change. You have the power in that school to make a change. And you need to do it because it's so important. I can't even tell you how
Awesome.
important it is.
Thank you so much. All right. Let's try to keep it to questions, guys, okay? Thank you.
Sure. Hi, Charlie. My name is Marissa Hamilton. There's one update on election integrity that you didn't announce, which is that General Branovich today indicted someone from voter fraud. And my question for you is that the Arizona legislature, they supported adding a $500,000 annual budget to audit voter registrations. How do other states that don't have as awesome of legislators like Jake Hoffman get those things to happen in their state too?
I've known Jake for years. I'm glad to hear you say his name. I said it as well. So let me just talk about other states really quick, if that's okay. Are you guys interested in other state audits at all? Are you guys interested in that? Okay. Set your DVR for Tucker Carlson's show tomorrow evening. You're about to see the mainstreaming of a lot of the questions you've had. There's a lot of things going around with Georgia. We've been into this. Actually, we're going back to the office tonight to go review all of this evidence, review some of the new stuff. You guys know we're super careful on our live streams and our podcasts because, look, there's sometimes are people that are kind of like the ready, shoot, aim crowd, right? We don't do that, right? So we're very methodical. We've seen some things out of Georgia that go to show separate entries. And again, you know I wouldn't say this. I gotta be careful because we're streaming live. I don't want to lose our YouTube. I kid you not, this is something we have to go through, right? You guys should all use rumble.com, by the way, rumble.com. Which is, how do I say this without losing the YouTube feed? So Orwellian, no, it really is. That there are duplicate ballots that look like they were run through the machines based on the videos that we saw. And there's real evidence of that. It's no longer suspicion. It's come out in a lawsuit because a Democrat judge, has allowed this thing to proceed pretty heroically. And Tucker has teased this, and it looks like he's going to do a whole show on this tomorrow evening, where we all know kind of like when Tucker covers something, it kind of just goes everywhere, right? Highest rated cable news show ever. And you know, he does a pretty amazing job. So Georgia, keep an eye on that. And what's so disappointing is that if that's the case, then the Republican running for the Senate in Georgia wouldn't have gone to a runoff, David Perdue, which means the Senate would be in Republican hands, which would have changed the entire dynamics of all of this stuff. But reversing it's going to be hard. I just want to make sure you're all clear. There is no blueprint to reversal. Not saying it's impossible. It's just that's really unprecedented. Georgia's going to conduct an audit. It looks like Pennsylvania has the votes in the state Senate to actually do an audit. State Senator, I can't remember his name, Doug. Yeah, that's right. Magistrano, is that right? Mastriano. It's this beautiful Italian name, right? Mastriano. I just call him Doug. He's great. And he's doing the audit there. Wisconsin and Michigan are kind of non-starters. But we're going to wait to see what this audit produces. But before anything else, I want the Georgia thing to come to light because I think it's going to all of a sudden validate a lot of our questions that we've had over the last 7 to 9 months. And the fact that Tucker teased it on a show yesterday, and I think I know exactly what he's going to do tomorrow because we've kind of seen the same sort of things. You guys might have saw it this morning on Steve Bannon's show. But again, we're super careful about what we talk about with this stuff because there's also these different dynamics. It's looking like potentially thousands of duplicate ballots were run through in Georgia, and that evidence now exists, right? And so if that's the case, I don't know what that means. Again, I say allegedly, but that could very well, in my opinion, open up justifying means to audit every single vote, every person on the voter registration rolls, and go through that completely and totally and categorically. We have been told since the beginning that we are destroying our country, we are a threat to democracy, that we are terrible and awful people, and we, amongst other people, have persisted for truth because we're not supposed to conform. And there's been some things that have not been out there that have been true, but I think a lot of people, if you watch Tucker tomorrow night, are going to have going to kind of breathe a sigh of relief because I think that the momentum's going to change. I don't want to hype it too much, but if you've seen what I've seen, you'd believe the same sort of thing. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Charlie, first and foremost, thanks for all that you do. We appreciate all your time and effort protecting our country.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I'm pretty new to politics. I was a student athlete not too many years ago, so wasn't super in tune with what was going on politically. In the last, year or two has really opened my eyes to what the left's all about and what the right's all about. And quite honestly, I'm disgusted with the left. I think they're corrupt. I think they're hypocrites. They hate our country, and they're very vocal about that. And quite honestly, their socialist and communist policies are in direct opposition of the American dream and everything that our country stands for. So my question to you is, can the left and right coexist in a country that somewhat resembles America moving forward? Because I think, as you alluded to, Arizona might be moving in the right direction, but other states might be heading in the wrong direction. And so, where do you see this going? How do you see, the left and the right living together in the United States in the future?
Yeah, I want to live together. I want to get back to the place. I want the country I grew up in. I grew up in 1993, and in the early 2000s, we didn't talk about this stuff, and it was a different country. It's changed in 10 years. And again, I'm not an alarmist. You guys know me. We're on really fragile footing here. We're close to passing lines that cannot be retreated from, where mistakes will be made, where all of a sudden those are reference points for extremism. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? And that's not good. It's bad. We should try to calm that down. We should be blessed are the peacemakers. Let me say that again. Blessed are the peacemakers. Our foreign adversaries internationally, including, in my opinion, the greatest instrument for evil in the world and for satanic purposes, the Chinese Communist Party, would love to see America broken up into 30 different pieces, right? So I don't think that's a solution. I don't think we should embrace it. I think we should try to get back to this idea of e pluribus unum, which is a Latin phrase. It's part of the American Trinity, which actually I should talk about. America has a Trinity just like the Christian Trinity. The Christian Trinity can be best seen in the text in Matthew 3 when Jesus is baptized. Jesus the Son, Holy Spirit came down upon him, and the Father says out loud, this is my Son, and I am very well pleased, right? That is the Trinity, right? Don't ask me to explain it. There have been volumes of books written about it. It's the way it is. You don't like it, go find a different theology, right? That's my best example, right? Basically, it's that simple. If I understood everything that God did, he wouldn't be worth worshiping. Let me just put it that way, right? So let me just be very clear. Now, there's an American Trinity, too, which is liberty, in God we trust, and e pluribus unum. Dennis Prager coined this term, which is that these are the three core ideas. If you do not have, for example, we don't have Christianity if we don't believe in the Christian Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? And the Father spoke existence in the world, sent His Son to save us. Spirit fills us so that we can fulfill His commands until Jesus' return. Very simple, right? How the Trinity connects us all throughout the biblical text. The same way is in the history of America. If we don't have liberty, which means the pursuit of virtue, if we don't believe in God we trust, and we don't believe in the phrase e pluribus unum, which means out of many one, which means I don't care about your color, I don't care about your background, I don't care about your culture, I don't care. All I care about is are you part of the American family? Are you willing to embrace it and believe in the American creed? The American creed is something that my grandparents' generation knew by heart, and no one even knows what the American creed is anymore. They used to say it on radio all the time. I know radio used to be a big thing. I'm trying to bring radio back, by the way. It's kind of nice because they don't censor what I have to say. It's super great, unlike this current nonsense I have to deal with, which is the American creed is super simple. You're made in God's image. You have certain unalienable rights. If you work hard and play by the rules, and you honor your country and honor God, you're probably going to succeed, and you are at least deserving of that promise. That's like the American creed, right? So let me tell you what the biggest barrier to all of this is, and that's why I focused on e pluribus unum. I'm going to go do a couple more questions, if that's okay, guys. Okay. I was talking to a reporter. I'm not going to say what this reporter is. And she said, yeah, Charlie, you said, it seems like you're willing to agree with the other side on a lot of different things. I said, I am. I think that it's not a good thing that Amazon is as big as they are. I don't think it's a good thing that there's insider dealing. But she said, the one thing that you seem to constantly disagree with is this issue of race. And I said, what do you mean? She said, and she said, it passed, she said, the left and the right are never going to get along because they can't agree on race. I said, well, what is the left's position on race exactly? I'm really curious. How do you even have a political position on race, right? It's like either you're a racist or you're not. Like, what is the political position on race? And she said, well, that there's entrenched white supremacy in all of our institutions, and that we have to make bold and dramatic action to remake America. I said, okay, now I see the problem. The reason that we don't have the country we grew up in is that we decided to embrace, quite honestly, the most divisive spirit imaginable, which is we're going to care about things you can't change. Right? So the American creed was always caring about things you can change, working hard and playing by the rules. Those things you can change, right? You know what you can't change unless you're Michael Jackson and like even he didn't change it very well, which is your skin color, right? It's immoral to be able to judge people based on your skin color. And Christianity proves this. Christianity is the greatest living, breathing experiment of believing in an idea of things that can change, which is most importantly your spirit. Your spirit is broken, born new by Jesus Christ, and you're able to live with him forever. That's a pretty amazing promise, right? That's by definition not caring about who you were. And then so we built a whole government around that idea and a whole system around that idea. And I believe I think this is my personal opinion. If we don't figure this race thing out, and what I mean by it is like, do we actually care about people's skin color as like a predominant mechanism to organize people or not, then this whole thing's gonna be done. It's that simple. It's like, we're not talking about economics, we're not talking about philosophy, it's this simple. It's, are we going to embrace the American ideal that I grew up in, or are we gonna go in this horrible, bigoted, racist direction and tear each other apart? That's really it. And if we go that other way, I think that the demonic influences actually win. I don't use that word lightly. I think they want us to care about those things. I think it'll tear us apart. And so that's really what we're at the front lines of. And I think all of us have to be graceful and loving and spirit-filled ambassadors to say, when someone gets fired up, be like, I refuse to say that things that cannot be changed should govern public policy. I refuse to say that things that cannot be moved, things that cannot be altered, should be the way that we organize life. We should organize life based on things that can be changed, people that can be improved upon. And so I'm actually optimistic because I think that these ideas have been brought to light. Remember, what's done in darkness will be brought to light. I think that there is a backlash against this. My fear in this, though, is that it's so entrenched in the institutions of powerful institutions, that's going to be really hard to kind of pick apart. But I think we're going through, and this is a different speech for a different time, like the Great Awakening, which is like this kind of new religion that is sent in. No, seriously, they have like theological beliefs and like all these sorts of things. So, but I'm optimistic because as long as there are truth tellers, the pen is mightier than the sword. And as long as the pen is mightier than the sword, people like you are going to make a bigger difference than I think we could ever possibly realize. So thank you. Okay, let's get to a couple more. Hello. Wearing a Proclaim shirt, my wife's clothing line, and been married 2 months in a couple weeks. Highly recommend it for all the young people out there. Okay.
It's very comfortable and made in the United States.
Yes, it is. And it's based off of Isaiah 61. It's a great, amazing project. ProclaimStreetwear.com, yes.
So Charlie, first I want to say thank you so much for raising awareness, for inspiring our youth and pouring into them. And I was here last month. That was my first time coming to Freedom Square. And there was a young lady that talked about abortion and compassion for those that have had abortions in the past. And you mentioned that you weren't aware of any like local organizations. So I wanted to share with you quickly, Choices Pregnancy Center is local to Arizona. It's formerly Crisis Pregnancy Center. They've been around for a couple of decades. Our families partner with them. They do post-abortion counseling, free ultrasound, free pregnancy tests. They're an amazing organization. So I do, so for anyone, because there are a lot of people that need support or counseling, something like that. But I wanted to ask you a question about CRT and whether you would recommend people take a course. A few years ago, I went back to college and was in an English class where the English professor was trying to indoctrinate our class, and it's fine if you want to be a communist and hate America, that's great. Just please don't spill that over into the English class. But fortunately for me, I had an amazing English 101 professor that taught us how to research. So I was the crazy student in the class, you know, raising my hand, asking questions, getting shut down by the professor. So I ended up writing a paper called Black Lives Matter Sometimes, because I wanted her to fail me.
That's so good.
I was hoping that she would fail me so I could take her to the head of the English department. She didn't. And we told our kids, don't do this when you go to college. Mom's paying, so it's fine. So that was back in 2017. That was the first time where I actually experienced day to day what some college professors are doing. So my husband and I have decided to take equity, diversity, and inclusion, which is actually the opposite of all those things. So, but we're choosing to do this because we know what to measure it up against, which is the truth, God's word. So my question to you in doing research, would you recommend that people take, like a research, a workshop, something like that, if they're rooted in the word, or would you be concerned that someone might get brainwashed and pull the other way?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of activating all of you, the supporter, into becoming full-time learners, nonstop. And we're about to announce, we're so close to announce this partnership. It's with a certain college in Michigan, go figure out what college that is, about a massive push for some of the online courses they're doing. And I personally take them, they're free of charge. I'll say it's Hillsdale College, they do a great job. And I'm only hesitant to say that because I want to push you to my promo code when you guys go do that, just because I want to show how many people are interested in learning whatever. You guys should go do it. The online courses are amazing, and they're like 10 to 12 a piece. They're 30 minutes each one. So you got to go about 300 minutes to pass the course. There's a test after each one. And I could tell you, the deeper you go into literature and these ideas, the more clearly you're going to see what's happening. That's the allegory of the cave in real life, right? The breaking of the chains, out of the cave, understanding what's happening. And I'll just kind of close with this, because we're close on time. I'm going to try to get to one or two more, which is that first of all, you deserve huge credit and courage for going and taking a course and writing that, and so you just deserve to be applauded for that. It's just so awesome. And I just want to compliment you, because so few people are willing to actually go into academia and understand where this is all about. And you saw this in 2017. It's even worse now than it is then, right? And so really what you've embodied is active involvement, which I think everybody needs to do. So thank you so much. All right. We'll try to get to one more after this. We'll try our best. Yes?
Good evening, Charlie. My name is Desiree, and I'm a junior at Arizona State University right now.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be involved in Turning Point there, and I'm happy to have experienced ASU before the lockdowns and before COVID. And I want everyone to know that ASU didn't make vaccinations mandatory, but the language they used in the rules they were going to impose on students made it seem so. And I received that evil email detailing the things they were going to impose on students like myself, and one of the lines from it states, "As we continue preparations for fall 2021, we are writing to remind you of the university's expectation that all students enrolled in on-campus academic program for 2021-2022 will be vaccinated." There are several loaded words in that statement, including remind, expectation, and will be vaccinated. And so even though vaccines weren't a requirement, how can I help my fellow students who are afraid of ridicule realize that they still have freedom of choice?
It's a wonderful question. And so, first of all, thank you for standing up against all this stuff that's happening. And you're right, and I did say this at the beginning, they all but mandated it based on the masks and the testing and creating this almost like two-tiered environmental environment. This issue, man, I got to tell you, I'm not like a vaccine person, right? Like some people make a whole career out of this issue. I don't. I'm not that. I've never been that interested in it. Maybe I'm going to get more interested in it. What gets me really interested is when someone says I can't talk about something. That's what gets me like 1,000 times more interested, right? Like I didn't really care that much about the vaccine, but you told me I can't talk about it, so maybe I want to go learn about it, right? That's just how I'm wired, right? Maybe I'm gonna have Robert Kennedy Jr. on my podcast, and what else can't I do? Like weird tech people, what else? And they make a list, and we try to do all those things. And so I just got it again. we made our own personal medical decision. I encourage everyone else to do this. And so by the way, if you're 75 with comorbidities, I can actually make an argument the vaccine risk might actually be worth it. I could make that argument because 75 comorbidities, downside could potentially be what the FDA and others are saying, and COVID might actually be death, and so you say, okay, I'm willing to do that trade-off. But if you're 19 years old, it has a almost immeasurable death rate. I'm going to say that again, almost immeasurable, according to Alex Berenson, who's the expert on this. And then we have higher vaccination rates at our universities than at the CDC and the NIH. What does that tell you, right? And then at the VAERS system, VAERS, we have over 6,000 deaths reported, and I think that's probably low. And then I wasn't that interested until, so this is what we did, right? So my wife and I got married on May 8th, and I just kind of went off the grid. The last podcast that I did was about vaccines. Like, great, super, vanilla topic. I said, all right, we're just gonna leave it all out there, go off the grid. I just said, contact me and email me with any of your experiences getting any of these vaccines, super curious, whatever. I come back to like 7,000 emails, right? Comments, messages, and if you have seen what I've seen, you'll care even more. I'm talking about tear-filled letters and emails. My father was perfectly healthy, running marathons, 55 years old till he got the second Moderna shot, and he dropped dead. And after the 500th email that I read, I realized there's something else at play here, right? Then, a guy by the name of Brett Weinstein, who quite honestly is a jerk to me for many years, he's a secular evolutionary biologist, super snarky on Twitter towards me all the time, whatever, came out with this video, and I saw it. I said, this can't be right. And he said, how I got red-pilled on the COVID-19 vaccine. I said, no way, like the Lord is coming back, times of Noah, like, no way, right? Signs of the times, there's gotta be a verse like in like Ezekiel about Brett Weinstein, like getting a red pill, like the least likely person ever. And he had a 3-hour discussion with the inventor of the mRNA vaccine, Dr. Robert Malone, where he was like, look, you don't understand, this vaccine is not like any others. It involves a spike protein. And he went through all the reasons for that. And I said, okay, I'm not gonna sit idly by. I am not, while I run a college organization and we have students that we represent and protect, I am not gonna be silent while our students and my members are forced to do something that might be bad for them. I'm not gonna stop, that's not gonna happen, right? And so, we're fighting it, like, we have like 50 different fights that we're on. And just so you know, the Biden administration, just give you an idea of like how effective what we're doing, and then I'm gonna wrap, is the Biden administration colluded with Politico on this article yesterday. You probably saw it, where they said they were gonna censor text messages based on vaccine misinformation. Do you know what their number one piece of evidence was? Us. Turning Point USA. So the Biden administration, yeah, exactly, applaud, yeah! Yeah, federal government, come after you. Okay. Pray for me, please. We need like an intercessor prayer team here, right? We'll get it going. I believe in the power of prayer. Seriously, I'm not kidding. The Biden administration basically said to Politico, because Politico said they reviewed all these messages from NIH. So here's how it worked: is Fauci got some intern that watches Tucker Carlson. He got like the late night shift. And was like, oh, Tucker's fear-mongering about the vaccine, because we announced our project last week on Tucker about just saying, we don't care about the vaccine, we care about the force of trying to make people take the vaccine. That was our argument, right? Very simple. So the NIH comes out, and they're like, we have to go after vaccine misinformation spreaders. Because I'm like asking questions and telling 19-year-olds that they don't have to take it against their will. So the federal government of the United States then goes to Politico and says, the reason we're gonna now go after people's text messages is because of people like Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. That's what they've said, right? And like, that's what Politico said. So that's kind of rather intimidating when the guy who has the nuclear codes is like that guy. Like, okay, well, right? The earth is not our home. We are waiting for eternity, right? So those words have never rung more true. But the point is like, man, if you're getting flack, you know you're over the target. But this is how I know it's just like a mountain of gibberish and lies. Like, if they have to smear me, it's the farthest thing from what I've advocated for. Now there's something way deeper at play here, right? Like, then I'm like way more activated to fight for this. Like, hold on, I'm like Exhibit A? Like, really? We're Exhibit A, where I don't really care about this topic. I haven't made a career out of it. What they're really worried about, though, is they're worried about all of a sudden people like you asking informed questions when you get your door knocked on by one of these like community engagement officers from like the Department of Health, and there's something else happening here. I don't have to get into all of that, but I just want to say, thank good. I don't know if you're getting the vaccine or not. I'm guessing you're not, right? Yeah, just based on your question. And if you said you were, maybe you might have a decision for it, because that's kind of what medicine all is you making your own decisions. That's at least the tradition we've always had. Is that I want all of you as an action point to be aware, prayerful, observant, and involved against mandatory vaccinations. I'm telling you right now, you can play a big role in this. And so we'll do the final question here, I promise, but I'm just going to close this. Don't you realize that this is always what they told us they were so afraid of if like Republicans took over the government? Like Republicans take over the government, they're going to control your bodies, right? Remember that was like their whole argument? Now they've taken over the government, they want to control our bodies. Last question, I'm sorry, I wish I could get to more.
Thanks. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 2 little guys under the age of 2. I'm 34, and so I don't really fall into the category of like the school board side yet, and I don't fall into the Turning Point side, and I really want to get more involved. So I'm wondering if, my question is Freedom Square going to expand into something like Turning Point where there's chapters and you provide activism kits and discussions and forums for people over the college age to get more involved? And if not, do you have a recommendation for, like mid-30s where we can get together and, I don't know.
So there's a great moms group here somewhere. I think that was told. If not, we'll get the references for that next time. But here's the first thing you got to get involved in, is that you are now the caretaker of 2 beautiful souls, right? And so by the time they're going to start asking questions and getting involved, you got to be able to talk about these issues fluently and hopefully in a way they can understand. And so that's the first thing I would charge you with, right? Is just saying, hey, I'm going to take a Hillsdale online course on the Constitution so I can kind of understand these things a little bit better, right? I'm going to kind of walk through some of these courses on that. That's the first thing. The second thing, at Turning Point, we have no immediate plans for that kind of group, but we are going to be starting Turning Point faith chapters at certain churches across the country. And just so you guys understand our vision that started here in this room is by next October, we want hundreds, and God willing, we'd love to get to 1,000 churches that are doing their own version of Freedom Square in their church. So I want you to understand what you're starting here. I'm sporting it all across the country, right? And then I'll close with this, is that this idea of spontaneous order is a beautiful thing, where because of this, thousands of other mini decisions are going to be made for boldness and courage and truth that I will never know about and can't control, but you'll tell me 3 years later, you did that because you were at Freedom Square. And that's the bigger thing that's happening here, right? You gather, you congregate, and you then act based on it. But I just want to say, as a young mother, what you're doing and the fact you're aware is so important. And here's my other piece of advice, find other young mothers that are just as alert, as aware as you, and form partnerships based on that. So thank you so much. So I just want to close on this. Sorry we didn't get to your question, I apologize. So I just want to close with this. Thank you again to Dream City. I encourage you guys to get behind what Dream City is doing in a variety of different ways locally here. Our next Freedom Square is August 4th. Am I right? It's a Wednesday, so circle your calendar. We'd love to keep on growing this and getting more people here. And we're going to talk more about what's happened in Arizona the last 30 days, what we can do about it, how we're engaged, and of course we'll do a little teaching and question and answer. If you guys want to come July 24th, Turning Point Action, we'll be hosting President Trump. And if you guys go get your tickets, just put Freedom Square. We'll do our best. Again, I'll say that again. We'll do our best to get you guys in, but we have a huge amount there. And then the final thing is this. If you have not given your life to Jesus Christ, make him the chairman of the board of your life. You'll never regret the decision. You'll be born new. It's the most important thing you can do in your life. Thank you guys again for coming tonight.